5 go bonkers in a field. The Cuckoo Crew Guide to Misbehaviour. Dickie Dread. And this is part 5. They both greeted me with cheery, "Oi, oi, Dickie, detention time!" That's Ben and Jen, if you remember from the end of the last episode, and dragged me into the fod wagon for another round of our ritual. Benny's not a believer in small taster line. He's a fat, producing something akin to a Glasgow kiss combined with a blast from a nuclear bomb. When Ben took his turn, he stuttered and fumbled like the madman he was, but we were used to it by now. He had once looked me in the eyes and said, I fucking love you, Dickie. You don't even flinch when I go like this. Oh, lovely geezer. The cooking service in the fod wagon was already starting to resemble a cake baking facility, powder and paraphernalia everywhere. One has to be a wee bit careful when minesweeping the area. Lots of things come in white powder form, and one is taking a bit of a gamble. Jen, in her boisterous mood, decided to entertain herself with making her infamous curry. She swigged directly from her vodka bowl, promising the crew a hearty feed. Couldn't help but razz her about how awful her curry always turned out, causing a string of abuse to issue forth from her mouth akin to an Essex gangster on steroids. "Oh, fuck off, you fucking cunt. It's a fucking master fucking piece," she'd argue, and to be fair, she did make a banging ruby. While Jen went off to collect her ingredients, Ben couldn't help himself. "The first band's on soon." He'd now got the ability to talk again. "You know, you lot know it," he announced, rubbing his hands together. So Paddy, Steve and Elliot grinned and made their way off to the main stage, eager to see the first folk band play. Corky and I, on the other hand, we settled back into our camp, perfectly happy with the sight of a full pot of stew and the hum of camp music. Our drug-fueled spirits would need some faster tunes etched into our bones, so some ska did just nicely, followed by a good old dose of Hawkwind. Excuse me. J&B were next to pull up into our vicinity, always close by in their beautifully crafted crusty wagon. Jay is a brute of a man, at least in appearance, with his Cuckoo Crew t-shirt, there's one, sleeves cut off, classic pipe always on the go, and a can of special brew, one of those that never stopped. B is a festival beauty, with her skinhead hair and lovely temperament. B got stuck in straight away, helping with food prep, camp maintenance and general helpful advice, something that most of the crew were incapable of. Jay is also the go-to man for any repairs, chainsaws, Jenny, whatever. He knows the score when he hears me shout, "Jay! Jay!" Not long after, Rancid Pete, with his one massive dreadlock bouncing from the back of his head, rolled up, with his muscly staffy Demi in tow. He grinned when he saw me and Taxi, handing us what looked like chunks of multicoloured putty. "Heavy-duty Billy, this lot, lads. Proper stuff," he said, with a mischievous wink. We necked the stuff quickly, feeling the rush hit us in a thick, heady wave. I asked Pete if he'd gotten the roof of his van sorted yet, to which he scoffed, "Nah, it's still leaking," before parking up next to us without a care in the world. It had always been like that with Pete. Nothing stopped him from getting a party started. By this time, most of the crew was sporting their Cuckoo Crew t-shirts, and an even larger line-up of freshly pressed ones were being handed out by Taxi and me. Though honestly, we couldn't be asked to make any real effort for sales. The stew was simmering under the careful control of B, Jen's curry pottering along, and already the surrounding crowd of ragtag festival goers had gathered around, their laughter and chatter mixing in with our pulsating soundtrack. With the crowd still building, I switched to the bigger speaker, mapping out the entire site for sound, and got the generator roaring. Cheers rang out around the camp from those who had gathered. It wasn't long before Tracy Traveller and Borrow arrived, hugging us in greeting from the entrance. Despite their pitch being on the other side of the site, they could hear the hum of the activity from our camp. I swiftly gave them a detention, welcoming them to the madness once again. Tracy and Steve are a lovely couple. They've been on the road forever. However, they differ in their festival activities. Steve gets bladdered early and goes to bed, whereas Tracy stays up all night, as you will come to find out later in the tale. Now, our camp was alive. People were laughing, dancing, chatting, hugging, drinking, and doing a lot of other things that probably weren't 100% legal. Those who could stomach food were eating bowls of stew or curry, which was terrible looking, but nobody was brave enough to tell Jen. Some folk had started to wander off to prep for the night's gigs, whilst others hung back, injecting a dose of madness to fuel us through the daylight hours. And then, as the sun began to set, Paddy, Steve and Elliot stumbled back into the camp. Paddy, already looking worse for wear, staggering about like a confused washing machine on a half-full cycle. He'd already lost a pair of glasses and his baccy tin, which usually also holds a myriad of powders and pills, but by pure luck he had put those in another container, and he wasn't going to stop there. "Couldn't even find me bloody baccy," he muttered, and sat down and blagged some off the crowd. It took him a solid hour to roll a joint, the usual Paddy process, slow, clumsy, often involving multiple false starts, but always a good laugh for everyone else. Evening was drawing near, and the desire to go see the family and some of the proper bands kicked in. Few of the others set off, but Corky, Pete, Jay, B and I were happier staying behind, keeping the vibe alive around the camp. At this point, Corky was on full volume, laughing uproariously with a sound that could likely shake a tree across the festival. He made a dash for a piss, but on the way tripped over Steve's tent, sending it flying. Didn't matter, poor tent had seen better days anyway. The music turned back to some mellow reggae, to wind us down for a bit, preparing us for the night of unpredictable anarchy. From the main stage to the back of the camp, the crowd was ready to lose itself. Pete, Corky and I laughed at the thought of another detention. It seemed fitting for the night ahead, another round of the fuckery, one final hit before we burnt down the night, with the kind of music, dancing and life that could only belong to us. And so, with the night ahead of us and the camp vibrating at maximum velocity, we knew one thing for sure: our legend was far from finished. With the sun dipping below the horizon, the last remnants of the day melting into the haze of smoke and laughter, the Cuckoo crew was finally assembled in full. The lunacy of the day was behind us, the tentative, bleary morning, and the slow rise into tomfoolery, the midday nonsense. Now, as the sky bled into deep purples and oranges, it was time for the night to truly begin.